Something's going wrong in the neighborhood. Why do we see further than we should? All around us, people run away, lie through and deceive without a care. There simply is no curve inside, and you know we don't spend all day and night. It seems they want our minds flooded with lies. If you want to bust the globe, I know these guys. Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Globebusters.
Who you gonna call when the horizon flattens out? Go ahead, call them up, see what that's about. We can go around in circles trying to find us out, but if you're looking for the truth, you got to find it out. NASA can't go to space, so we hit the roof. Get it, hit the roof, and it all came to light with 200 proofs. Now I'm just really sick of people lying to me. So when I tell the truth, don't come crying to me. Pick up the phone, get on the line with me. Line with me. Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call?
And welcome everybody to Globebusters, Mars One, the next giant fraud for mankind. I am your host, Bob Xanadude60, and we are back with another great show for you today. And yes, Darren, another great show. I'm going to keep saying that for a while just to tease you. But anyway, we're back with another great show for you today, and we're going to have all kinds of neat things that we're going to cover today. Have a little small presentation that I'm going to do on gravity and the electric field. Then we are going to be talking about the Mars One fraud and all the missions to Mars with our special guest, the UAP channel. And after that, we are going to have FE Core join us, Mike and William from FE Core with preliminary microwave results from the 25-mile microwave shot. And then after that, we are going to have Friend of Yahweh and also another gentleman, Steve, from the, Realm Walker channel. Boy, messed that up. And they are going to be debuting their new video and animation, which is really, really cool. I love the animation on it. It's awesome. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce the group here. Before that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jeranism. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated today. Holy cow. How you doing today, Jaren?
No problem. That's the story of my life, really. So, doing fantastic. My house survived the 4th of July, which was a good thing. Other than that, things are great.
Awesome. Good to hear that. Yeah, we had quite the fireworks show here going on. They have a really big fireworks show over at the Green Valley Ranch golf course that they do every year. And it just so happens that our back patio and our back bedroom window looks right at it. So we get this incredible view of it. So it was pretty cool. But the fireworks didn't stop till about 3 o'clock in the morning. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I know that. And I'm like the old man now that's out there with the hose. Like, don't you get that firework on my roof.
I know, right?
I used to laugh at that guy when I was young, but not too young anymore.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, fortunately, we have tile roofs on ours, so our house, so I don't have to worry about that too much here. So anyway, okay, so next up we have John the Morgile. How you doing today, John?
I'm doing very well, Bob. Glad to be here with you guys. And yeah, my house also survived the 4th of July, so that's good. We're all doing well.
That's awesome. Good to hear. Okay, and lastly but not leastly, well, not lastly but leastly, is Iro from Argentina. How you doing today, Iro?
Fine, perfect. Hello, everybody. I'm start worrying for the 4th of July. You, man, what's going on there? No, great time, great time. In fact, when I listened about the topic that you're gonna cover a few days ago, I saw in Netflix a documentary called "Inside the Mind of Einstein." I really recommend everybody to see it because you're gonna see this guy is a complete liar. I mean, of course, he even know how to do math, you know. And in the documentary, they told us that no, this guy is just the more, you know, the special power of Albert Einstein was how he imagined the things, but he never make any kind of, you know, formula or equation, just this one, and they show the relativity, you know, equation. So I hope we can share some topics about gravity, because it's something that really caught my attention, and I have a deep research about the topic.
Ah, beautiful. That sounds awesome, Hero. Very good. All right. And last but not least, I guess last but not least, at least for now, we have UAP from the UAP channel. How you doing today, sir? Glad to have you back with us.
Hey, great. Good to be here. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Iru. You mentioned Einstein. That's just a little pet project of mine of debunking Einstein. I made a video called "Stinky Einstein."
I think he debunked himself sometimes.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's definitely debunked himself on countless occasions.
Yeah, it's just funny. I present him as if you don't know who you're hearing about, and I'm just talking about all the things that they don't tell you about him. But he doesn't sound too good of a person, you know, for a while there, and then it's like, oh, Einstein, genius. He's a genius, right?
Was his nickname really Stinky, or you just made that up for him because
no,
of his poor
hygiene? That's my nickname for him. I'm trying to get it to catch on. Stinky Einstein.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, I've talked about Einstein on several occasions, and that guy, I mean, it is amazing that he is still pushed. Of course, you know, at this point, I certainly understand why he's pushed, because, you know, his nonsense, even though it's been completely debunked, the reason the mainstream stands behind it is because they are simply, you know, they're pushing an entirely false model when there is another one that works so much better. And we talked about it so many times before, the static electric and electromagnetic model, not only for gravity, but for many other things. Of course, relativity is just simply nonsense on every level. And we also find out that not only was Einstein likely a pedophile, but he was also a plagiarist, and you know, kind of took credit for a lot of his wife's work. But that's a whole nother subject we could do a whole show on, right?
I got a question for UAP.
Yeah.
UAP, bigger idiot, Don Pettit or Einstein?
I think Don.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good pick. You got it.
Einstein's the kind of idiot that you know, he may himself have not really known how bad it was, but Don has to be aware, because everybody's reacting around him continually.
The video you did, I don't know, a week or two ago, was just classic. Him sitting in that green screen, just fumbling.
Oh yeah. The way people are saying, you know, they're rolling their eyes. You know, these are the people who work with him. You know, they're just like, and then there's the hot mic where the lady's saying, "I don't know what he's even saying."
Yeah.
Yeah, astronaut Don Pettit takes the idiot cake pretty much every time.
And you got a leak.
Yeah, you got a leak.
There's probably a plan for that. He puts on his happy face. You know, you got a leak.
And he does that swallow is classic. Like a cartoon character.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him sometimes. You know, he gets the wide, like deer in the headlights look, partway through one of his little expositions where he starts to go off and wax eloquently about something, which never ends up good. You know, it's a path that leads to nowhere every time. But he
Mrs. says
realizes what he's doing halfway through. His eyes get big, like, oh crap, you know, what have I gotten myself into? Dead end alley, you know.
Yeah, my wife says he looks like he's mind controlled or something. He gets those big saucer eyes and just zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite one of those looks that he does is when they're reading the questions, him and the other guy, I can't remember the other guy's name, but you know, they're talking about whether or not they can see stars, and there's this really pregnant pause, and then the one guy says yes, and then Don Pett, oh yeah, you know, it's like they were just waiting to see which one of them was going to say which answer, so they could stand behind each other, because neither one of them had a clue.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah, you hear them sometimes. They'll say something like, "What's the line on that one?" You know, that kind of stuff, and it's just amazing how that kind of gets glossed over before you wake up to this stuff. You see and hear things like that, you just don't notice it. But everybody here, you know, should be able to pick up on those little things they say under their breath, like, what did we say about that? Can we see the stars?
Yeah, amen to that. And that's still something that, you know, the ballers will deny. You know, some people, I won't mention names, but they will straight up deny that and say, oh well, you just believe that because they told you to believe that before you saw it. So anyway, all right, couple announcements. First thing is coming up in just a month or so, almost just 31 days. We have the Flat Earth International Conference in Canada, where that is going to be a really excellent conference. I'm looking forward to it. And Robbie wanted me to let people know about a deal that just came up on this, and this is awesome. But basically, you can get your tickets half off, no matter what ticket you buy, half off, when you book your room at the Fantasyland Hotel, which of course is really going to be awesome. That's going to be quite an amazing place. So that's a great deal, great motivation, I think. And also, of course, I will be there. Jaron will be there. We have several other people there. And I finally have decided what I'm going to be doing my presentation on at the Canada conference. And it basically, you know, you guys have all heard me talk about the electrostatic gravity model. And there has been so much information that has come forward on it as of late. It's absolutely mind-boggling. So I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, you know what? I'm going to take our hour and a half or whatever and do a presentation on that, because I have tons of material on it and a lot of stuff that I've never covered on Globebusters before. And I think it'd be really, really good for the community to then be able to go out and have a very viable model that is backed not just by, you know, flat earthers, but mainstream physics is also very much behind this. And the proof that I'm going to be supplying is going to be voluminous. So you guys won't want to miss that for sure in the Canada conference. So like I said, you've got that special 50% off tickets deal if you want to go there, starting August 8th and 9th, or 9th and 10th, 9th and 10th in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. All right, beautiful. So there we go, we got that covered. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is a couple things just real quick, and I'll probably spend 20, 25 minutes on this, something like that. I just want to elaborate a little bit and show you a couple clips on maybe a preview of some of what I'm going to be showing on gravity, but this is just some of the stuff that's come to my attention this week alone. Like I said, the proof is getting to be incredibly voluminous. So I just want to cover some of those things today. And the first thing I want to show you guys is something that Tesla's Apple, Richard, did. And apparently, from what I can tell, Richard has come up with a new,
Amazing.
yeah, it is
Amazing.
amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
He has come up with a new type of ferrocell, and you're about to see what it can do here. But basically, it gives you an entire view of the not only the dielectric inertial field, but the entire toroid around the magnetic field. This is absolutely amazing. I have never seen such incredible detail on this, but if you look at it, it's just stunning. And this really is a very, very good representation of the EM field that surrounds the Earth. And I don't mean the globe Earth, I mean the flat Earth, because the center disk part of it there is where we are. That is called the dielectric inertial plane. And from that, you have the centripetal and centrifugal lines of force that actually do all the magic. And I believe, in my opinion, are integral in what we see when we look at the star field. And so many other things, and I'm going to elaborate on that in just a bit. But if you have not seen it, you'll definitely want to go over and check it out. I'm showing it here, but I'm sure Tesla's Apple Richard will be showing a lot more on it. But isn't that amazing that you can see so deeply into that? Absolutely astounding stuff. So kudos to you, Richard, Tesla's Apple, and I hope to see a lot more out of that Ferrocell. That is absolutely amazing. All right, so next thing up is a clip that I found. Well, actually, let me go back a little bit. Many of you on my original presentation of gravity heard me talk about Richard Feynman's findings of electrostatic energy that is actually emanating from the Earth and is showing that there is an electrostatic potential that runs roughly about 100 volts per meter, and supposedly has been taken up to 50 kilometers, which would be 5 million volts of static potential. Well, we're literally swimming in this electrostatic / electromagnetic soup, okay? It is, in my opinion, and many others, what we are calling gravity. Gravity is not something that is caused by masses attracting to each other. It is not something that is caused by bent space, which, you know, depending on what model of gravity you want to subscribe to, either Einsteinian or Newtonian. But it is rather something that is much, much more measurable, much more demonstrable, and much more manipulatable. And you know, the evidence is just absolutely pouring out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play about a minute of this clip so you can get an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about this electrostatic field. Now, this particular video comes from a video that is dealing with people building these atmospheric electrostatic electricity collectors, okay? They're literally harvesting electricity out of the air with these things. Now, granted, it's not a whole lot, but you know, depending on how it's harvested, if you are able to cover a significant enough area with it, then you can actually start getting some fairly significant power from it. And in fact, a lot of people are of the opinion that that is how the power companies are doing a lot of it now. And I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't doubt it if you know, it is something as simple as actually collecting a lot of this voltage through all of the high tension wires that we see. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but there are people that definitely are of that opinion. So let me go ahead and play this, and we'll give this a listen to her just a couple minutes, and then we will move forward. Here we go, guys.
Works. Much of the following explanation is adapted from Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman's lecture on physics, a section called Electricity in the Atmosphere. For every meter you go up in the air, the voltage increases by around 100 volts, or we could say around 100 volts per yard. We can draw these voltage increases using what are called equipotential lines. Notice that the ground is negative and the sky is positive with respect to each other. According to Feynman, this extends upward to 50 kilometers, or 31 miles, where the air is very conductive. This is the case in fair weather. In stormy weather, like a thunderstorm, things are quite different, and I won't talk about that here. But if this voltage exists between your head and the ground, why don't you get a shock? The reason is that your body is a good enough electrical conductor that standing on the ground, you're basically a part of the ground. The equipotential lines would look like this. There's still effectively 0 volts between the top of your head and ground. Similar effects happen with trees, buildings, and so on. What about the electric current? A downward electrical current exists and consists of positive ions. Molecules are clumps of matter that have a positive charge. These ions are moving slowly toward the ground. The current density from these ions is very small, around 10 microamps, or 10 picoamps, crossing each square meter or yard every second. So in any small area, there's not a lot of power. And that's the explanation about atmospheric electricity, adapted from Feynman's lectures.
All right, cool. So basically what that just showed us is that there is indeed a static electric field that is acknowledged by mainstream science. There is no doubt that it is there, and like I said, anybody that's done any tower work or ever managed to come across ground when you're on top of a skyscraper or anything like that, and you basically get the crap knocked out of you by a static electric charge, you certainly understand that it is definitely there, as I have found out many, many times the hard way. So moving from that, there was a new video that, well, it's not really new. It was presented at the EU 2016 conference, and they actually will sell this rebroadcast for $29. I bought it, I don't know, several months ago. It is so well worth it to get this because it has all of these lectures. Of course, I think if you wait long enough, they will release all of these on the Thunderbolts Project website or YouTube channel, and you will be able to get them for free. But what I found very interesting about this particular presentation by Bruce Laybourne is he has actually mapped out on a sphere, mind you, the geometry of Earth's endogenous electrical energy, okay? Meaning that, yes, once again, they are integrating the Earth's electric field into the electric universe model. And, you know, like I said, this doesn't differ too much from the flat Earth model other than we are positing that, or at least I am positing that the anode of this circuit is likely a firmament or something like that, whereas they are saying that the anode, if you will, is an actual galactic or universal type function, separated by dielectrics of vacuum and atmosphere and stuff like that. So there's definitely some minor difference, and I do say minor differences really. The reason that I believe the flat Earth model works so much better is because when it's scaled down into a reasonable, you know, structure, like, you know, what we assume the Earth is much smaller and everything is much closer, I believe that all these work better. So anyway, as I was watching this particular video, I learned a few things that I didn't know before. It doesn't surprise me at all that there are several hotspots where there seem to be current emanations and current returns, or, you know, inflowing and outflowing current regions. And in fact, one of the things that I really thought was amazing is they were able to come up with an electric circuit geometry of the Earth. Now, the interesting thing about this is when you project this circuit geometry onto a sphere, it comes back to something that I'm sure you will remember, John. That is Richard Hoagland talking about these 19.5 or 19.47 degree node points on the quote unquote globe Earth, right? And they illustrate that. Yeah, and they illustrate that basically by taking a pyramid and putting it inside of a sphere. And when you do that, basically the 3 points of the pyramid will touch, depending on its orientation, when you have the top of the pyramid either at the top of the ball or the bottom of the ball, the points will settle at 19.47 degrees in 3 places, either north or south latitude, again, depending on where the top of the pyramid is oriented. Okay, great. And we find interesting things that go on like that. One of the most interesting things, of course, right at 19.47 degrees is the big volcano on the Big Island that is very active right now of Hawaii. And there are also other places where they, you know, talk about these energy upwellings along these 19.47 plus or minus latitudes. Okay, so he goes on and he basically describes all of this and he maps it all out and comes up with a hypothetical current. But what I couldn't help but notice is when you look at some of these positions, and if you plot them out on a AE map, then it forms a very coherent looking circuit. Now, I haven't done this. I just kind of did this in my mind on a map, and I would love to get a graphic artist to be able to interpolate this and put it onto a flat Earth map so that we can actually demonstrate this visually, because it's kind of a jumbled, kind of confusing mess when you look at it on the globe. But it really seems to kind of pan out much better when you look at it on an AE projection. What a surprise, right? Kind of like what we see with earth.nullskull.net, or at least used to see with earth.nullskull.net before they removed the AE projection because it was far too incriminating for the ball Earth model. I mean, let's face it, whenever you looked at something on the earth.nullskull.net AE projection, whether it be wind currents, temperatures, water currents, you name it, they all make perfect sense on an AE projection. And I believe that from what I've seen on this and just kind of, doing a mind exercise and visualizing it over an AE map, that these nodal points will show up in a very coherent pattern on the flat Earth model, okay? So this is really quite amazing. And of course, and he also goes into the global heat flow. Now, we've all seen this on the flat Earth map. This is pretty jumbled and non sequitur. It doesn't really follow. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But when you look at these on an AE map, you get a perfectly circular heat flow that goes around the Earth, okay? Another thing that I thought was absolutely amazing, and I didn't know this, but apparently there is what is called a Catatumbo lightning, okay, which occurs at the mouth of the Catatumbo River in Venezuela, where it empties into Lake Maracaibo, okay? And this particular phenomenon happens at just about midnight, almost every single night, where you have this intense discharge. So this is one of these nodal points that he's talking about, where we are talking about current flow that is emanating specifically from certain points of the Earth. And we've also backed this up by what is called Birkeland currents. And again, they all seem to take these counter-rotating circular positions on the AE map. Again, they make perfect sense, again, on the AE map, but not so much on the ball Earth map. He also ties these electrical anomalies, as I have talked about before, to gravitational anomalies. Whoops, that's amazing, isn't it? That's very, very interesting, because as I have talked about before, every time that you find one of these gravitational anomalies on the Earth, it is very close to a magnetic type of anomaly. And apparently he's also tied this into this electrostatic field intensity that we just watched the video on, okay? So the case is building, ladies and gentlemen, and pretty soon it's going to be absolutely unavoidable. When looking at the silly gravitational model versus the far superior, demonstrable, accurate electrostatic model. This is just not going to last long, the gravitational model. It's silly, and we are very fortunate to have this group of scientists and engineers working on it from the EU model, Electric Universe model, headed up by Wal Thornhill. And it's just, the work coming out of these guys is absolutely fantastic. And I still maintain high hopes that there will be a point at some point in time where they will figure it out that this is, what they are perceiving as galactic energies are right here local. And I understand why they're doing this, because everything that they've been taught, all these axioms, these mathematical axioms, at least as far as celestial distances, have been set forth in the mainstream, and this is what they're working from. Therefore, when they measure a large current flow or large voltage potential, they are saying, well, that's got to be 40,000 light years away or something like that, instead of seeing it for what it is. And also that these currents aren't nearly as high as they would see that they are. But again, it's nothing more than a matter of scale at this point. And I do have high hopes that they will figure it out soon. All right, so moving on from that, John the Morgile sent me this, and John, hat tip to you for this, buddy. This is a great compilation of evidence for very strange things like rotation and electrostatic effects. And I want to show you guys some technologies that have been discussed in this, play a couple minutes of this video. But again, what this whole thing is about anti-gravity, perpetual motion, everything, and it has absolutely nothing to do with trying to do anything with gravity, because hell, they don't even know what gravity is. They can't even measure the field, without inventing ridiculous apparatuses like LIGO. But all of this has to do with manipulating electrostatic energy, not only in nature and nature's creatures that do it, the way that bees are able to actually fly, the interesting things that they have found out about scarab beetles, and how they have some very interesting properties in their outer shell that seems to be antigravitic, but it's not antigravitic at all. It is simply they are able to manipulate these parts of their anatomy to change charge potential. And this is what gives them the ability to seemingly defy gravity. I'm sure we've all heard about the old thing about, bumblebees shouldn't be able to fly because their mass is too big, for their wings and all this stuff. Well, by physics, that's true, but they are not taking into consideration, obviously they can fly. And what they are finding out now is that this is all part of a mechanism, of part of their cellular structure, that they are able to change their dielectric permeativity, I guess it would be a good way to put it. So let me go ahead and just play a little bit of this. And I'm going to show you some technology that has been created by scarab beetle wings, and a couple other things. So let's give this a listen really quick and to see what you guys think about this. Here we go.
For this, he took a whole bunch of these bug wings and he glued them to like a Venetia blind structure, and he put it into a little platform he built. So they were all, these bug wings were all covered in here. And he used I theorize he used the wing covers as well as the inner wing itself. There's also a kind of a handlebar on this thing with some controls. You can see the thing a little better here in detail. The controls, I think, had to be manipulated continuously and probably vibrated to create the same action that the bug was doing. There was also down at the base some kind of a lever, which I suspect controlled the amount of lift he was getting out of this thing. Anyway, Grebennikov claimed that he could fly this thing or levitate it, and it would go around at almost 1,000 miles an hour. Now you ask, how can that happen? Well, he said that there was an energy field that built up around this thing due to this gravity field building up in the platform, and by this thing building up, it built out a force field that basically surrounded him and protected him from the local environment. So even though he was flying at 1,000 miles an hour, you could go, you could be wearing your Sunday best suit and not get it flutter a bit at 1,000 miles an hour. But if you get into the other things he did with shape, they almost mirror the stuff that I discovered. And it proves, I guess, that there's either two crazy people in the world or there's two people that have found the same discoveries.
Has anybody ever threatened your life?
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty interesting, and I had seen this before. And of course, a lot of people will say, "Oh, that was a complete hoax. None of it's true." Of course, that is exactly what they would say. Why? Because the governments and the powers that be certainly don't want this technology coming out. They have done their best to quash it in every way, shape, and form. But again, that's simply not going to be happening anytime soon. I think it's going to come out more and more, and really, it's beginning to look like the secret to quote unquote anti-gravity is a combination of a couple things. Being able to manipulate the electrostatic charge of something, and the other thing that seems to be a very big player in this is rotation, okay? Spin, as in gyroscope, and we've talked about that, where you basically can take a gyroscope, spin it up, even if it weighs 50 pounds on the flywheel that you're doing, you can lift it usually with one finger right over your head. And the only price that you're paying in return to that is you must rotate around with it to kind of dissipate off some of that weight in a different motion. Okay, and I'm sure UAP may have something to say on this here in a bit, but it does seem that this is the big secret. Electromagnetism, electrostatic, and rotation will give you these anti-gravitic properties. Now, there's something else here where we're going to cut over to a clip of an engineer, and I believe that this guy is a Lockheed engineer. It doesn't say it on this one, but I saw this video a long time ago. I think I even brought it up on Globebusters at one point, but he's talking about this little device that's nothing more than a piece of plastic, and it's called a Celt, okay? And what's interesting about this Celt is there's something about its form, its shape, that you can spin it, I believe, counterclockwise, and it will spin, you know, quite well. But if you try and spin it the opposite direction, it will resist that, and it will stop itself, and it will actually start spinning in the opposite direction. So let's take a look at that.
Get the funding out.
Einstein's work is only a slight modification of Newton's work. But we do understand that Newton's work has, well, Newton's work, for example, Newton says,
This is my one.
says anything that's in motion tends to remain in motion, right? Okay, so I have something, and I'm taking it around counterclockwise. And see it, and what Newton said is true. It just wants to go around and around and around and around and around. This particular thing is called a celt. It is not, it's clear plastic, there's nothing in it. Okay, now I'm going to take it around clockwise. It says, no, I don't want to do that. It's just like my children. I will do it my own way.
How did it go the other way?
Precisely. A Newton's law.
Is that because of the rotation of the planet, or?
Well, there
Can I try
are,
that?
you may. In fact, first of all, send it around counterclockwise.
Okay. And this is called a cell?
It is CELT, C-E-L-T.
What's in it? Okay, there we go.
Nothing's in it. It's plastic. Okay, now take it around clockwise.
Okay.
And it says no, and it goes back the same number of turns you sent.
Oh, I've never seen anything like that.
Now go out stronger. I know. See, I'm looking for the exception to the rule. You have to, if you can use language, you really need to convert it into mathematics.
But here's one thing, this makes sense to me. If you can cancel out gravity in a falling body, and you can even reduce a percentage of the effects of gravity for aircraft, it would take less fuel, they would be more efficient, and they could hover with less energy, and that much I can figure out.
And the atmospheric edge of the Earth will be meaningless.
I think the realm of it is quite probable, since I was studying some of the older experiments done by T. Brown, Podleinoff, and those folks. And what's interesting about Podleinoff is that the anti-gravity effects seem to go right down the Earth all the way up to an unknown area.
Tesla said they're not interested in my time. I want you to take everything I can teach you and go in your time and see if they'll listen to you. And if you don't make it, you're going to have to pass it on, because at the rate we're going, we're on a self-destructive course. Carr said, I will, and he got his own lab started and started really getting into a lot of free energy devices and building them.
So he built a spaceship?
He's building small spaceships then, and he had different sizes, different models. There's a company, Advanced Kinetics, in Costa Mesa. That's where we were living, in Costa Mesa, California. And they're looking for a research and development laboratory technician. They gave me a job, they put me in the research lab, and I was inventing ideas all day long. I just loved it, because I like to invent simple ways of doing hard things. We could talk about things that were unlimited, not limited. I said, my mission is to see that we have habitation and transportation in one vehicle. And he said, well, you sound like a guy that's back east getting in trouble right now. His name is Otis Carr. And he put in a patent for a levitation device, and they wouldn't give him the patent. He said, you've got to pull that levitation out and anchor it on the ground, and we'll give you a patent on an amusement device. You cannot use levitation. Day and night, 24/7, we were building these small prototypes. And they would range anywhere from 2 12 inches to 3 feet to 6 feet, to, in size.
And they actually flew. They actually levitated.
Oh, yeah.
And what was the source of the power?
Well, it was magnetic in nature. And
you were actually building these for people to sit in. I mean, not just models.
These were prototypes just to prove what we wanted, and then graduate up to where human habitation could get on board. And
Okay. So basically, we're looking at this stuff, and this research goes back 30, 40, 50 years ago, that they are, starting to understand this. And, it's pretty apparent that they have brought it forward to its logical conclusion, that, they are now incorporating it into their own military craft, which many people are calling UFOs. Okay. I personally have seen several of them. A couple times we've seen them go directly over our house, where they are completely silent and they are unbelievably fast. And they appear and disappear absolutely in the blink of an eye. So, those type of accelerations you would not think are normally, people wouldn't be able to, take that kind of G-force. But again, as the guy said earlier, there is something that goes on where a field comes up around, the driver or the people that are within this field that kind of acts as a protective shield. So again, all of this evidence that's been around for quite some time, seems to be something that they have brought forth completely to its fruition. Of course, we've talked about this several times before, that what Werner von Braun told Dr. Carol Rosin about the final alien card being played, is most likely going to be utilizing this very same anti-gravitic, quote unquote, I use that term loosely, technology. And this is precisely why they don't want people experimenting with electricity and, trying to relate it on a cosmological level, because it simply works, people. It works. And they will do everything in their power to discredit it, from the trolls that you see in every chat every day saying, oh, this isn't real, or this isn't good evidence, or anything like that. All of them, to the people that are just simply indoctrinated by their college educations, which have taught them that this stuff is simply impossible because it doesn't meet any known laws of physics that they have been taught. And that's the key, isn't it? Right? That they have been taught. There's a whole nother world out there that is related to electricity, that is very, very applicable to this. And of course, they're not going to be teaching these physics. They want to keep it a secret. Okay, simple as that.
Yeah.
So,
can I interject?
You betcha.
Okay. I'm familiar with a lot of these guys, the Boyd Bushman. I saw a lot of his stuff, and it made me think of Bob Lazar.
Yep.
And so it seemed to me, my take on that was that they were trying to recharacterize what they had, the technology, because if you remember, they took Bob Lazar into under their wing, and I think it was what's his name, the old German guy. He's still alive. He worked for Nixon. Henry Kissinger.
Kissinger,
I think.
Yeah.
Yep. And Edward Teller. Edward Teller is who I'm thinking of. Actually, at Los Alamos, took Bob Lazar in under his wing a little bit, which was strange because he was good at physics, but he wasn't. Didn't have the formal education, and then they brought him in and ran him through a program where they showed him a lot of these technologies, and I watched this, and reading body language and everything, I'm thinking, this guy's telling the truth. He is. He seems to me like he is, but what he's saying cannot be true. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where I just filed it under, file 13 or whatever for
right.
Who knows, one day type thing. But it was fascinating. But what they did, they brought him into a room and showed him how they had all these technologies. They showed him the UFOs, and then he said they're on the side of this mountain or hill or whatever in Area 51, which would be on Google Maps. And I went myself and looked it up, and I could see the outlines of the doors that he described, and there was a certain number of them. So there were some things that checked out, but they took him into a room and they showed him, they overwhelmed him with information. It was all about aliens and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of like information overload. And I think it was just kind of a mind control type thing where they wanted him to believe that it came from space aliens. But that's, neither here nor there, that he saw technology and demonstrations of things that shouldn't be possible. And that goes right along the lines with, like, same thing with Boyd Bushman, where they showed him these things, and he even demonstrated in that video one of them. But then there's that connection where it starts to get kind of wacky, or it starts to get crazy with the space aliens. But what he knew, he worked for Lockheed Martin, right? Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes.
And so what he knew from that was certainly enough to have him convinced. But where the reality of it is, I think it breaks down after a while. But that's just my opinion from looking into it for a couple of years myself.
Yeah. Well,
but fascinating stuff, though. I had just watched some of those videos that you showed, just so happened to, in the past week or so.
I know everybody seems to get on the same wavelength. We've had that happen so many times.
Yeah, and I was watching jetpacks, because I saw a video where some guy's flying in a jetpack, setting a record. They talk about it like it's the first time ever. And I'm thinking, I remember jetpacks from these old James Bond movies and stuff like that. And they never really explained it, but then anyway. But yeah, fascinating stuff, Bob. That's great.
Yeah, it really is. And and there's so many things that have come out of it. I think T. Townsend Brown and the Beefel Brown effect, and all these strange electromagnetic, electrogravitic, things that have been kind of glossed over and said that are impossible. And I'm having a total brain cramp right now. The guy was in the video. And I'll remember him later. But he's
the Hutchinson effects also.
Hutchinson, Hutchinson. Yeah, thank you, Uru. Yes, John Hutchinson and the Hutchinson effect. Has been largely written off as whatever, anything other than legitimate. And again, this is what they do. They don't want anybody looking into this, and they just want you to say, "Oh, it's just nothing to see here, folks. It's just some weird electrical effect." So, but again, I see things like this, and I see it as just another big piece of this preponderance of evidence that I keep harping on about this electrostatic field and how it is absolutely our gravitational effect. And I've covered this several times before, and I even talked about this static potential and gave a demonstration, I think it was last week or the week before, whenever, about how it is, there's an experiment that basically lets you see that this is likely what is keeping the water in the rain clouds, these tons and tons of water in the air, is the static dipole alignment effect. So now we're going to kind of bring it even further forward, and this is something that came out just this week, actually, 3 days ago, from the University of Bristol, and this is fascinating, guys. We've all seen the little flying spiders flying around, and they call this effect ballooning, okay? And it has been previously thought, at least asserted by mainstream scholars, that what is happening here with these spiders is they're simply throwing a web of silk into the air. That silk is catching the wind, and they are able to fly around with it. Well, nice, but now that has been completely debunked, and they have proven that actually what's happening with these spiders when they do this is that these filaments, these silk filaments that they're putting out, the spiders are somehow able to manage to change the charge potential of these silk strands, I guess, and they are able to fly with them. Just much like, what the bumblebees can do, much like how the scarab beetles, on the bottom of their wings, this type of physiological feature that allows them to manipulate this electrostatic fields. So I'm going to play this video in its entirety. It's only 3 minutes and 24 seconds, but I think this is going to be really eye-opening for a lot of people. And remember, keep in context that we are swimming in this electrostatic field, and this is the secret to gravity/anti-gravity. In fact, this is actually what it is. There's no doubt in my mind. Yes, I assert this like it's a fact, and I believe it is a fact. So, prove me wrong. Let's give this a shot. Here we go.
Of all the great flyers the world has ever known, it may come as a surprise that one of the best aviators in the animal kingdom doesn't even possess wings. Spiders, instead, use long fans of silk to carry them through the air, often for many hundreds of miles, in a process known as ballooning. They have long been known to have flown the nest in such a way. Charles Darwin himself marvelled at hundreds of tiny spiders landing on the Beagle while out at sea, and later recorded how they took off from the ship with great speeds even on a calm, windless day. During this time, there were two theories for how ballooning worked. The first theory, and the most obvious explanation, was that long strands of silk emitted by the spider catch the wind and the associated drag forces pull the spider aloft. But spiders will only balloon on days where the wind is a gentle breeze, which raises the questions of how there'd be enough force to pull the silk from the spider's spinnerets, and how could heavier spiders even become airborne at all. The second theory was that atmospheric electricity could also provide the force needed to get the spider aloft. Similar to how your hair lifts to stand on end when you rub a balloon on your jumper, spider silk could be lifted into the air by natural electrostatic forces in the atmosphere. These electric fields are present at all times all around the world, but are most noticeable during thunderstorms when they are at their strongest. Surprisingly, until now, the electrostatic theory of spider ballooning had never been tested. In our lab at the University of Bristol, we isolated spiders from any airflow or atmospheric electricity and generated our own controlled electric field at levels found in nature. In response, the spiders began to change their behaviour to perform tiptoeing, where they straighten their legs, raise their abdomen and release silk. This behaviour is only ever seen when a spider wants to balloon. Furthermore, once the spider was aloft, its altitude could be controlled by turning the electric field on and off. This demonstrates that spiders can balloon using electrostatic forces alone, but in all likelihood, they would use a combination of both wind and electricity to balloon in their natural environments. So how do the spiders detect these electric fields? In this experiment, it was also observed that the minute sensory hairs on the spider's exoskeleton were similarly moved by the electric field. We can then infer that spiders can feel the charge in the air using the same sensory hairs they would use to detect a breeze. The results of this study show us that electrostatic forces could be an integral part of spider ballooning. And by fully understanding the mechanisms behind it, we can better describe population dynamics, dispersal, and ecological resilience, all of which are important for global ecology.
All right. So, isn't that interesting? We have just seen the people at this university set up their own controlled experiment without wind and just simply emulating an electrostatic field that would be equivalent to roughly that 100 volts per meter that we saw that Richard Feynman described. And they are able to literally navigate around it simply by changing the charge potential of the silk that they are putting out. Again, and just like the older guy, the Lockheed engineer that was in that video, said that, we can learn so much from nature because it's all over the place, all around us in nature. So, this is just another piece of the preponderance of evidence, people. Gravity and what they are calling gravity has nothing to do with masses attracting to each other and nothing to do with space bending, but has everything to do with electrostatic charge potential and being able to manipulate that field. This is something that is so demonstrable, it's ridiculous. And go ahead, whoever's going to say something.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to go back to earlier on. You showed the increasing charge potential, and you mentioned like a dome firmament or something that would be the anode to the cathode of the Earth.
Uh-huh.
And have you ever seen or noticed in the videos of supposedly nukes going off that they have these curious streamers? Have you ever noticed that before?
Like the electrostatic streamers that come off it, kind of like above volcanoes, sort of, or
it's like it almost looks like a smoke trail or something like that, but they're parallel. I think like one I'm calling to mind, it had like 6, and they're streamers. They go from the ground all the way up as far as you can see, straight up, and they just appear right at the moment of detonation. And you see them over and over again. And once now that I mentioned it, if you go through these videos and see it, you'll see it all the time. And I saw one person's comment was a theory that or hypothesis that they're just connecting the ground up high enough to basically create lightning, and that they're simulating the nuke that way because not everybody believes that nukes are what they are. I personally
neither do I.
Don't.
I don't believe it for a
They're
second.
not what they say they are.
Nope.
Right. And so when they're not using the sunrise trick or the sunset trick, whichever, with dynamite, then sometimes you see these streamers. So it goes along with what you're saying. And definitely, maybe they don't have to reach it all the way up, or maybe it's just high enough that they can create lightning whenever they want.
Yeah, very, very possible.
And use that.
When you say that, what I immediately thought of, and we covered this, I don't know, gosh, a couple years ago, I think, on Globebusters, but we were talking about, there was a video that came out where there was a satellite engineer that was working on some Black Ops project. And honestly, guys, let me say this right now. I don't know if it was true or not. I have my reservations about it, but there were some things that he said that did kind of ring true for me. And that is that when they were doing when they were sending the nukes up, right, and detonating them at high altitude, whatever operation that was, that he was saying what was actually happening there is that they were trying to ionize or give a charge potential to this firmament, right? This glass firmament up there. And he said by doing this, that by having that charge, that they would be able to work out the geometry and basically bounce microwave signals, i.e. satellite, 6 gig, whatever type of signals off of it, and have it drop down and bounce off of it and drop down and hit the ground. And of course, it would then, if that was happening, that would give you your characteristic footprint, right? Your satellite footprint, which would be kind of a oblate or an elongated kind of a circle, right? Looks like a shoe, literally. That's why they call it a footprint. And that may or may not be true, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind that, this may be one of the reasons why they were, trying to, set off so many alleged nukes. And I don't think they were necessarily nuclear as much as I think that they may have been kind of like maybe EMPs or just, high energy type of discharges. I don't really know, what was going on there, but obviously it's part of recorded history, right?
Yeah, there definitely were streamers on those, on Operation Fishbowl. What was the other one? They had another smaller one, but I think it was Operation Fishbowl when they were
could have been
detonating these.
Dominic.
Yeah, Dominic. That's it. Yeah. And I remember seeing those streamers on those videos.
I know the streamers you're talking about. I know what the mainstream explanation for that is, but I don't know if what you're saying could be correct. What I've heard is that they were letting those go so that they could see which way they're blown. Basically, they're like gauges. Yeah,
Okay.
you let the streamers up at the same time the bomb goes off, and then you can gauge it went, this fast to the right, because you would see the streamers move in unison to the right. That's their explanation.
Yeah, that may be, but yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. But regardless, it all seems to come back to some sort of charge manipulation, and that's really the name of the game here. So we'll just keep hammering away on it, and I
Well,
will keep presenting this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it also ties in. I've been doing some really fascinating investigating into the whole fuel and airplane thing, and from the best that I can tell is there's definitely some way that when an airplane is aloft, it's not using as much fuel as everybody is led to believe. I mean, that's the bottom line as far as I can tell. And whether or not that means they can use no fuel, I certainly don't know. But I remember from years ago, scramjets and ramjets, that they were talking about how they can do these things and just use basically the oxygen from the air at high enough velocity, it would compress to a sufficient degree that it replaces the oxidizer that would have to be carried up as fuel, and so then you only use a minimum amount of the other propellant. But that, of course, it's all black ops type stuff, so it gets really fuzzy pretty fast. But it all kind of ties in together with that the evidence that I've seen about the fuel. I think you guys looked at the fuel hoax idea before, and it doesn't really lead anywhere, does it? It's kind of, there's some curious things, but
yeah, we looked at it, and in fact, that was the show that we got our community guidelines strike for hate speech on.
Oh, all right.
So yeah, it was called "Get Your Tinfoil Hats On, Kids. We're Going Down the Rabbit Hole," and of course, YouTube has taken that down, and we do have a copy of it. And I think maybe I know what part they were hitting us for, but again, I'm not sure by any means, because it was such a, if it was that, it was so bogus, it's unbelievable. But yeah, we were talking about that, and basically I had some guy from Southwest, I think he was Southwest Airlines, over at my house one night, and he's a ramp rat. He's out there doing the fueling and working all of those guys, and we were talking about it, and I think we kind of came to the conclusion before I stopped looking at it that the jets are using a whole lot less fuel than what they say they are, and that may be true, it may be false, but there does seem to be something really strange going on with that. Don't know what to think about it, but that's kind of where we left it.
Yeah, it's and it would go along with the dielectric theory that you get up to a certain altitude and you start to be able to do strange and wonderful things rather than just pumping a whole bunch of fuel through. That at least would make sense. Although I've seen some anomalous things on the ground as well. But yeah, it's a fascinating topic, but it's something that's you don't want to necessarily be on the cutting edge of, I guess, if it's getting too much interest.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But
okay.
But
did somebody else have something to say, or I hear some clicking?
I was going to say
well,
something too, but I just wasn't sure if I wanted to get a community guideline strike if it's like a hot topic, because you know how YouTube is. They won't be necessarily very explanatory in terms of why they're giving you the strikes, and it's kind of hard to filter through a 3-hour thing and figure out, well, what exactly was it that we said on this episode, right? But I was just going to mention that this look into no fuel or the whole fuel hoax, to me it always ends with the petrodollar, and that's really one of the biggest hot button topics, I think, of the day, because of course if anything threatens the underlying support for the dollar, it's going to be brushed under the rug and no patents and that sort of thing, like as was mentioned in that video. Because of course the United States dollar rests on the petroleum being scarce and of high value and all that good stuff. But yeah, that's where it really ends for me. Every time you look into it, it's like that's really the biggest hurdle that I think technology has to coming to all sorts of really awesome ends that we could definitely all benefit from with, you know, and restoring the world without having to burn all sorts of fuels and pollute everything. But again, if the dollar is going to be affected negatively by it, then the powers that be will pretty much do anything and everything they can to prevent those sorts of technologies from coming to fruition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense that you know, where do you actually see it? And that would be in like commercial air travel. It's something that is just something totally amazing and incredible when you really look at it. It's just a marvel of engineering. It's a convenience that is second to none. You wouldn't give it up for the world. It's awesome. And why do we have it? Well, because perhaps if there are a lot of technologies that we don't know about, that would be one that really would have to be let out to the public, because otherwise how could they explain how they got around from place to place so quickly if they're the only ones who used it? So then we all get to use it. Of course, we pay for it a lot more than we need to, but yeah, it's if you remember that Jones channel, I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, we did.
But that's all he talked about, and he was very methodical. He's still out there, but he's very respectful and methodical for the most part. I can't see why he would have been completely taken down, but it could be the subject or the topic. But for all the petrodollar elitists listening, you know, I just want them to know I totally believe that I'm driving my car with liquid dinosaurs, so you know they can just take that to the bank and just, you know, not get too upset.
Yep, so true. Iro, did you have a comment you were chiming in?
I was saying mostly brontosaurus.
Yeah, that is the most expensive.
That's the high octane, the 92.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just have a you know,
Tyrannosaurus Rex your fuel pumps.
A few things. In fact, if you know, guys, if the fuel was based on dinosaurs here in Argentina, we must be, you know, we have a lot of dinosaurs bones, so maybe we are the most rich nation out there. But we are really bad with the dollar issues. But I have a few things with you know, based on gravity and electrical field, but I had to do a presentation, and I don't want to spend so much time because we have guests on the show.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll kind of sideline it for a bit, and maybe if we have a little bit of time a little bit later on, we can get to that. But yeah, we do have lots of things to talk about. And Mike, are you the only one here, or is William with you?
William is here, Patrick is here, everyone's here.
Okay, cool. All right, so I guess before we move on, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of switch gears here real quick, and we'll kind of end that presentation on static electricity and gravity. But just, you know, keep that in mind, folks. We're not going to let this go. We're going to keep right on top of this and keep proving it all that we can every single week. But for now, let me go ahead and introduce Mike Kavanaugh, who is the president of FE Core. And Mike, how you doing today?
Very well, thank you, Bob.
All right, beautiful. And William, are you here with us?
I sure am, Bob. How are you doing?
Doing great. Okay, so we have William and Mike here from FE Core, and they have just very recently completed a preliminary 25-mile microwave test. Many of you may remember I was showing the pictures, I believe last week or maybe the week before. We had just gotten the new microwave set up. They wasted no time in getting their first initial microwave shot set up, and you want to go ahead and talk about it a little bit, Mike?
Yeah, well, I think we ordered the microwave antennas 2 weeks ago, or 10 days ago actually, and I got them the next day. I ordered them. I set them up at my workshop to test. I'm unfamiliar with the equipment, so I wanted to try them out before I took them out in the field. And I did some indoor testing and was able to work my way through the very, very simple interface. And I called up William and Patrick to try it out in the field for the first time, and basically to validate also the laser experiments. We did it from basically the same locations. We went up a little bit higher because that's necessary with microwaves. But yeah, we struggled the first 2 days because we had some instability in the mount of the antennas. The first day on my side of the setup, we had the antenna to a wooden pole, and there was a fairly decent wind, so it was shaking in the wind all the time, and that was an absolute no-no for getting a decent connection. And today I contacted the owner of a lifeguard post that was, I think, 150 meters away from the original location, and asked for permission if I could set up the antenna there, and yeah, that was okay. And we found a steel staircase there, and the entire building was standing on top of a concrete base foundation, so it was rock solid and steady. And we set it up. I think the antenna on my side was about 7 to 8 meters above the water level, and we shot a signal 40 kilometers, 25 miles to the other side of the lake where William was standing with Patrick. And it didn't take us long actually to get the connection going. I think once they were set up, it took you about 5 minutes, William?
Yeah, I would say that by the time when we arrived, we set up and we had everything up and running, and I would say within 5 minutes we were connected. We were synced and we were talking to one another, and that was a huge change because for the last really 2 nights prior to that, we've been watching blinking lights for hours at a time and seeing no results, getting nothing on the screen. So it was really quite surprising and takes you back a little bit when all of a sudden, boom, you have only a point of reference off in the distance. We didn't have any major calibration tools. We had compasses that were built into telephones and things like that. So we were doing our best to try to get the bearing correct. But I think that, as Mike pointed out, the bigger problem that we were having was the fact that, we didn't really find this out until a conversation with Sandro last night, where he had spoken with somebody, I think the manufacturer had suggested that, in order to really lock in a signal, you really have to be affixed to something that is solid. You can't be waving around in the wind. So yeah, within 5 minutes we set up. We on our side used I would call it a junction box, a big metal box to which we could strap our metal pole to, level it with the bubble level in the phone, mount the antenna on top, plug it in. Takes about 3 minutes to boot the machine up. And once you're connected on your monitor, on your screen, on your computer, I'd say, yeah, within another 4 or 5 minutes, we started seeing changes that it was going from syncing to calibrating to registering, and then all of a sudden it all lit up and we had a signal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, we can see Rob Durham, who is also part of this project, sent me some screenshots of what you guys got. And we're actually seeing some of the signal levels here that were actually taken, excuse me. And also on the left-hand side, we have the ubiquity map that shows very plainly that, we shouldn't have been able to do that. You should not have been able to do that. It should have been hidden behind, I'm sorry, how many feet of curvature did we calculate that out at, Mike?
If I'm correct, at 7 meters elevation on my point, there was supposed to be 73 meters of hidden height on the other side. which means that either William would have to go 73 meters up in the air to get a link, or we both have to go to a 40-meter elevation on either sides to get the link running on spherical geometry parameters.
Right. So there, yeah, that's 740. That's about 250 feet at least, maybe a little more, which is huge. And this was just your preliminary. Is this across Lake Issel? Is that right?
ISIL, yes.
ISIL. Okay, right, and which is close to your house. And of course, the next one is going to be a shot from the Netherlands to the White Cliffs of Dover in the UK, which is going to be 97 miles or something like that. A huge distance.
Yeah, we found a location that's actually a little bit more back from the original spot that we did the first distance calculation on. So I think we're getting close to 150 kilometers.
Yeah, which is unbelievable. That is so amazing. But like I said, this doesn't surprise me because, as I've said before, I used to work in the microwave industry myself. As a field engineer, I went out and actually built these sites, did all the testing, set them up, got them going on the antennas and the diversity antennas. Of course, we had done all the field calculations at the main office of Western Telecommunications beforehand, before going out in the field, inspect all the equipment. I personally wrote all the software that did all of the automations, and was a lead engineer out in the field. And there were several occasions in which we would actually bypass certain sites so that we could make adjustments for overall signal linearity across the 10,000 channels that we were broadcasting on these microwaves. And, like I said, typical anywhere from 40, 50, 60 miles per shot, but sometimes we would bypass one or two and go up to 130, 140 miles on these 6 gigahertz microwaves, and we would have absolutely 100% solid signal, reliable. So, you guys doing it on 5 gigs was no surprise to me. And it's really, I think that you're going to have the very same success shooting from the UK to the Netherlands. It's just simply something that we know that there is no curvature, and yet even Ubiquity and all the manufacturers will tell you that there is no way that this path can possibly make it, because you would be shooting through several hundred feet or several thousand feet of curvature.
Yeah, well, it basically says that in the left image, that the link is obstructed.
This is UAP. I just wanted to interject, just from my background. I'm looking at that left image, that says it all for me. I would walk away from this. If I didn't know anything about waking up to all this stuff, I would look at that and I would say, okay, on the electromagnetic spectrum, microwaves are just beyond, the infrared. So slightly longer wavelengths, right? So they have, there's less refraction, just like with regular visible light. As you get to the more red side, you have deeper penetration, you have less refraction. I mean, so it just tells me, that it's flat. It would have to be flat. There's, I don't know the scale there, but just looking at the map, there would have to be some curvature, because you guys did it at a low. What was the
7 meters above the water on my side, and on the other side they were like,
I would say 10 meters.
10 meters, and the calculators all say that for us to get 60% of the Fresnel zone clear, we should at least be 38 meters on either side. And if we want 100% of the Fresnel zone cleared, we need to be at 45, I believe, meters on both sides. And there's not a spot on the beach that is that high. At least not on my side, and I'm positive that's not on the other side too. You have to go up on the bridge there, maybe. But we weren't there. We got pictures and video of the whole thing, so it's undeniable.
Yeah. And the microwaves, how much penetration do they have? Like if you have an obstruction, my understanding is
in the right image, you can see there's a dip. A dip in the signal capacity, and that's basically something coming in between of your signal.
Okay. Yeah.
They-
Yeah, that
they
further
have
proves it.
a lot of boats on the lake, so basically every sail that comes in between the signal will put your signal capacity.
Yep. Well, that's
Yeah, very
amazing.
convincing.
Yep, very much so. So, and then Mike, just before you came on the show, you guys had dropped it down to is 4 meters on each side. Is that correct? And you were getting kind of a sporadic, intermittent signal, but not a definite lock.
Well, it didn't get a link uptime running. You know, it did receive some signal because it on the slave side, on the other side, it was registering. You know, and registering means that it's found its counterpart signal on the other side, but it then went from registering back to syncing again. You know, and it did that all the time. So
Were you running this in a full duplex or half duplex mode?
half duplex.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Well, so obviously what was happening, and again, and I talked about this last week, but what happens is when you get too close to the water or you violate the Fresnel zone too much, again, you will get a condition called multipathing, and that will cause, the signal ultimately to become unusable, either through checksum errors or signal cancellation, even possibly. You could get a phase differential that literally causes the signal to cancel out. And this is why they spec a Fresnel zone in microwaves. So this is something that is, obviously adhered to, but you don't, as you guys demonstrated clearly, you don't have to follow that. And one of the next things that I would like to see done, and I think you guys will probably do it if you are able to keep the dishes up, is to see how long and through what kind of weather conditions we can keep a solid link up.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one of the major issues that might occur with the long distance transmission is, that particular piece of water, of ocean, is a very busy shipping lane. And some ships can get pretty big, and we are not that high, So maybe it could be that we are getting our link obstructed by actual ships.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be a problem. But if I remember right, I remember seeing in the FE Core chat that I believe Sandor came up with a chart that not only showed the weather, but the shipping traffic across there as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's beautiful. We could actually, kind of watch the signal, and if there's a ship in the vicinity or crossing those specific coordinates, then we can certainly explain. And not only that, that will be another beautiful proof that there's something in the direct line of sight, and that it's not ducting or refracting around. So I think that honestly, that only works to our advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if it becomes a direct line of sight issue, then there is a direct line of sight between a ship maybe in the middle, which should not be possible. There should not be a line of sight with something that is 60, 70 miles away.
Right, but it will go to demonstrate that a solid steel ship can certainly block that signal, but apparently the curvature of the Earth can't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
well, and we got a lot of attention, of course, with the hanging these antennas up, and people were asking what we were doing all the time, And when you start explaining the stuff that you're doing, they always say, "Well, wouldn't you have to account for the curvature of the Earth?" And then you look at them, and you look at the other side of the lake, and open your eyes, look across. You're not supposed to be able to see that at all, What curvature? We're shooting at a target that we can see.
Right.
We shouldn't even be able to see it with our own eyes, let alone shoot a microwave signal across.
Right now, just out of curiosity, and I think the answer to this is no, but have you guys also you've already done the 25-mile independent, with the salad aiming device and the laser, but did you use that at all this time in concert with the laser, like you're going to do between the UK and the Netherlands?
No, we just tested the microwave equipment, and there were no lasers involved this time.
Okay, well that's fine, because we already know that the laser goes across, so you have proven that. And for those of you that are not aware, the next test that will be done between the Netherlands and the White Cliffs of Dover will take place simultaneously with not only the microwave beam, but they're also going to fire a laser across as well. which then if both work, of course the baller's going to come back and say refraction. Then you're going to say really. For both of them precisely,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen, guys. So,
well, basically, the salad is going to be, and the laser beam is going to be a sophisticated aiming device for us to point the microwave antenna to, because the salad has got GPS targeting. So, we target it to the target location, and we have an exact angle to which we need to put the microwave antenna to. So it will be a double win for us.
Yep.
Now the optical refraction on a laser should not be the same, exactly the same on a microwave, because as UAP just explained, those are totally different wavelengths.
Yeah, the refractive index is going to be different, and when you have the two together, that's just a checkmate.
Yeah.
Yep. So there you have it. And then of course we'll just go for longevity and whatever we can do. Obviously, a lot of this will depend on the landowners or the land caretakers or whoever as to whether or not we will be able to leave this equipment up for any length of time. Do you have any word on that, Mike, about whether or not we will be able to leave it up for any length of time?
No, we just found this weekend. I think Sandra and Rob found a location, a suitable location, which is actually pretty high up. And I have to contact them the coming week to see if we can mount the antenna on top of that, and if we can do that for an extended period of time. But we also have to have the same period of time available on the other side, because having just one antenna off will not do anything, of course. And the other side, I don't think it's going to be that easy to rent it for a longer period of time. It's not that kind of a location that permits that. So we'll have to see, but as long as we can get, we will try to keep the signal up. Preferably it will encounter different weather fronts, so we can see what happens.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Well, that's outstanding, Mike, William. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I'm excited about it, and like I said, there is no doubt in my mind of what the results will be between the Netherlands and the UK. In fact, it should be a walk in the park, because that's only half the distance that Ubiquity set when they set their world record. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if they use the same amount of power that we do. Now,
okay.
We are limited to 1,000 milliwatts, 1 watt, basically, and I'm not sure. Maybe Rob knows that what the 300 plus kilometer link used for power.
Well, my guess is that the 1 watt should do it, because you have an exceptionally high gain figure on those parabolic antennas, those parabolic dishes. So when I glanced over the specs to it, and I can run the path loss calculations, but I believe that you will have enough power 1 watt easily for half that distance, the 97 miles. But it wouldn't surprise me that they were able to get that, the 200 or 180 kilometers, whatever it was, also with 1 watt, because really you're only looking at about a 3 dB differential then at that point, which I don't think is going to affect the signal a lot. But that remains to be seen, and it doesn't matter, because the Ubiquity is not FE core, and we're doing our own experiments. Ubiquity is quite pleased that their little unit set that record, something that they're crowing about in their sales, and as they should be. But we know the reason isn't so much for microwave performance as it is that there's simply no curvature to the Earth. So,
and today's shows that, and it shows it as a standalone experiment. It stands on its own 2 feet. I think we can stick this on the pile of preponderance of evidence that you've been building for 3.5 years now, and the pile just keeps getting taller and taller.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does, William, and that's just it. I mean, because that's the whole idea. As far as any smoking gun proofs, in my opinion, we've got so many smoking gun proofs, it's ridiculous, right? Just the fact that we can see so much further on so many places, Kanagu or whatever, and a million other examples, simply prove it unequivocally, gyroscopes, all of these things in my mind are absolutely slam dunks. But for those that don't want to invest all their eggs in one basket, that's why we propose this preponderance of evidence. And at this point, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of examples that completely debunk the globe and completely support the flat Earth model. And a lot of people feel a lot more comfortable when they have a couple hundred or 1,000 examples, way more than even 200 proofs, right? That are done with a high degree of technical accuracy, and they can then call upon these results and say, okay. And mind you, the Globers will never be doing this, because we know that they're going to come up with exactly the same results, and then they will simply not have any explanation for it, because the only explanation for it is that the Earth is flat, in my opinion. So there you have it. So anyway, guys.
You would think that at least once out of all these experiments that the globe would be favored or at least hinted at if there was anything to the globe. But of course, never does anything align to the theory of the Earth being a spinning and orbiting globe. So yeah, well done experiment. And I think that the more things that we can tack on, the better for the skeptics out there. And the more people that have credentials, the better. Because for some reason, most people don't want to listen to, someone that doesn't have a degree in some sort of physics field or whatever. So yeah, well done, brilliant.
Thank you.
All right, beautiful. Okay, Mike, William, thank you so much again for coming on. And we'll look forward to the further findings that FE Core comes up with.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
We'll keep you posted.
All right, sounds good, guys. Take care. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, beautiful. So there you have it, guys. We just keep piling it on, and we will keep piling it on, because we know the truth, and all it is just getting people to really walk away from the indoctrination and see the truth for what it actually is. So that's kind of our mission. So
can I mention something, because
sure.
it comes up in comments so much, and I just love this opportunity to say it. What just happened is a slam dunk. It's a checkmate. It's goodbye to the globe. All right. So somebody's listening right now who's like, they feel like they're drowning, their head's spinning. I don't know, because it's like the whole cognitive dissonance thing. And so I just want to say something to them before they become a cognitive dissident against the flat Earth. Where what happens is oftentimes they'll say, well, you guys, you do this, but you can't explain, why does Rectus 9 have a diamond core then? And it's like, well, I reject the premise. I'm just making it up, but that's the point. It's made up. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the explanations that they have out there for what other phenomenon are explained, so in quotes, by science and the models that they have are bogus to begin with. And it's not our objective to have an explanation for everything. We just are here pointing out that, okay, the Earth is not a globe, right? But that doesn't mean that we can explain whatever, the moons of Jupiter. What are those things then? I don't know. Right. I don't know. But we don't, we're not obligated to explain that. It shouldn't take away from what was just shown here. And it shouldn't turn people back against, into an ad hominem attack against the person who brought forth the evidence. Well, this person can't explain this or that. Well, we don't have to. I reject the premise. Right. It's basically when you back somebody into a corner, oftentimes they want to fight, but really we're just reaching out our hand and saying, hey, join us in trying to figure out these things, because now you know what you don't know. Now you know you've been lied to your whole life. And it kind of sucks. Some people get mad. I didn't get mad at all. I just was euphoric because it's like, hey, I just figured out something that was a problem for me. I had cognitive dissonance before waking up. And I think if you see it from that perspective, that things are going to make a lot more sense in the future. And especially if more people join us in how we're trying to figure things out. That's just an olive branch, I guess, that I wanted to offer out, because I think it can be hard if somebody hears it for the first time and they just want to try to dismiss it. And so I know you guys see it all the time, but I'm still kind of fresh with it. I kind of respond to these people who become aggressive, right off the bat. Go ahead, Jaron. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, it seems like one of the more difficult things to, see is that people demand to know all the answers if you're going to question what they currently believe. And, that's one of the hardest things. I mean, if you kind of, you could look at like the Mayans, for instance. They all believed that Quetzalcoatl, or whatever its name was their god. Well, they were all raised that way, and then the elders believe that, and everybody believes that is their god. So if some people come from outside into this, tribe and say, well, that's not your god, that's not God, everyone's going to reject that, and they're going to say, well, then where do babies come from? How do crops grow? Well, just because the people that come into the tribe don't know the answer to that doesn't make their claim of saying that's not God incorrect. And I think that's what people are missing here, is that there's enough wrong with the globe that we're bringing up. And yeah, we're throwing some, ish against the wall sometimes on some of the things that we are postulating as far as the flat earth, but that's because we don't know and we want to know. But the main point is that the model that we've all been sold has so many errors, and we may not know all the answers, but it doesn't mean you can just shoo it away and say, nope, I've been given all the answers already and I'm happy with these. Because if you really take the time to look into them, you won't be happy with them.
Yeah, they have people programmed to have this premise that there has to be a discipline out there, call it science or whatever, that explains basically everything.
And they taught us that from being in school, right? I mean, they sat us all on desks and said, we'll now give you all the answers to everything there ever has been known to know, and you just need to regurgitate it and you'll know the truth of the whole world. So that's how they've trained everyone to think that's how it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So science, instead of being a process to discern the truth for ourselves, becomes sort of a faith base of knowledge that we're just supposed to accept on face value and never stray from that and never question that, which it really becomes antithetical to the scientific method altogether when you stop questioning things, especially stop questioning hypothetically accepted things. And so, yeah, I mean, I always bring it back to the Santa Claus thing because, right, they want you to operate under the assumptions that they live under. So, like, if you're trying to explain to a child that Santa isn't real, then they'll start throwing things at you like, well, then if he isn't real, then why does everyone get presents every day or something like that? And so they're still operating under the premise that this thing is real, when in fact, we can't play along with that forever. And I think that flat earthers go above and beyond the call of duty of doing that and arguing the globe to the last possible extent. So like we'll look at things under the lens of, if the earth was a globe, how would this work, and then do experiments. Whereas globe earth believers in most cases haven't done any sort of experiments under the assumption that the earth might actually be flat and stationary. And so it's just two completely different worlds, where one, a flat earther is in fact a scientific mind, and a globe earth believer is just regurgitating that religion of scientism.
Absolutely. And we're doing things in honesty, and I still have people I'm seeing saying things to me like, why did you leave that video up of the Salton Sea? Why did you leave that up? And it's like, well, because I don't care. It's about honesty. No failed experiment isn't going to make the earth a globe. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's just part of the process of getting to the truth that you're going to have some tests that don't show up with an answer that that you think is satisfactory, or that people would think is satisfactory. But that doesn't mean anything other than I'm honestly leaving it up to show people the process. And it just tells me that there's Globers out there that probably have done tests that have not shown what they wanted to show. And so why don't we ever see those? Well, of course we know why, because they're not honest. They're not going to show those tests. All these guys that we all know their names, they're going to continue to put things on their channel that only show what they want it to show. So if they go out and do a test and it doesn't come out the way they want, they're not going to show us. Or that's the difference between me and them, I guess.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'll have conjecture in an older video where, and I present it as conjecture. Maybe there are times where I'm not as clear as I should have been about it, but I offer forth conjecture about something because I'm trying to figure out what's going on for real. And if I'm wrong, I'm leaving that up. I'm not going back and trying to cover my tracks and make myself look better, because I think it's just like what you're doing. It makes you look better. It, in fact, is better if you're just completely honest. And if you look back at the fact that we've been completely programmed wrong for most of our lives, and we are scrambling around and trying to figure out, okay, we just realized it's like Truman Show or whatever, and we're trying to figure out this whole new world of what is actually real and true about things you can't easily test or observe. You're going to go down paths, and you're going to try to create frameworks that fit things together and make sense that aren't completely correct. But I think, it's good to leave it up there to just show the process and the
absolutely. Well, and that's been my goal from the day one. It's always been that I wanted to put out my research, and then it's kind of like me keeping track or keeping a journal of my process, and that's kind of all that it is. And if people don't see it that way, then so be it. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was just going to say, and if anyone thinks that they're going to totally nail flat Earth on the first go at it, I think they're kidding themselves, because I look at this whole thing over the last few years as a journey, and where I started was 100% globe Earth believer, and you look at a couple things and you contemplate on it a little bit, and you become a globe Earth skeptic, and then from there, I mean, it really takes quite a while to get to the point where you almost don't believe anything until you can prove it for yourself. And at that point, you're going to get things wrong on the way. You're going to make mistakes. You might posit things, whether it's hypothetically and stated as such or not. And you're going to get things wrong. And that to me, I don't see that as a big deal. That's part of the scientific process. And anyone, again, who thinks they're going to get this thing nailed on the first go at it, or even possibly ever, I just think that's a little bit overambitious.
Yeah, the difference is what we're saying isn't mandated and taught in schools and things around the world, and absolutely just presented with this creepy, hypnotic type presentation to put people in a suggestive state to accept it, which I've noticed. I don't know if you guys have really talked much about it. You have?
Yeah, I've noticed a lot where they just do the same thing over and over again. I mean, who do you respect more? Somebody who goes out every day and tries to debunk something that's a current belief with some new exciting experiment or some new idea that they have, or somebody who goes out and just reconfirms every time exactly what we were all taught and exactly what the mainstream believes? One of those people can change the world. The other person will not ever change the world.
Yeah, right. And what we're doing is it's kind of, I don't want to characterize it, but I'll characterize what they're doing. Would you allow somebody in your house with a stopwatch to stand in front of your kids and have it swing back and forth and do this whole like ritualistic, weird, like repetitive, monotone chanting and stuff like that, and then start feeding them information about things they can't observe or experiment or verify? That nobody would do that. They would absolutely kick the person out, throw them out on their ear or whatever. But it happens all the time. It's incredible how much of that is actually going on when you wake up to it and start to see it. And we're just a small voice, really. But like you said, we can absolutely make a huge difference just because having the truth on your side, is just extremely powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing what's been done with the belief in mathematics, because math is a great tool, and I would never say that it's anything other than that. But it's a tool, and it helps prove things that can be proven in reality. So we know that how much money you give somebody and how much money they get back in change, that all that stuff it can be proven. You can be shown that it works and that it's correct. So it helps us in our daily life to use math to move money around or to check investments or whatever. But when it comes to being told that these planets are a certain distance and that their orbits are all perfect, and the weight of the Earth and the weight of the Moon and the gravity on Saturn, people just don't recognize that is all hypotheticals. And of course, it works mathematically. It wouldn't be a model if it didn't. So it doesn't make it any truer or any more real than anything. It just makes it a well-told story.
Yeah, they've gone so far as to say that math is the language of God, the language of the universe. But if I ask somebody, besides being a shortcut to physically measuring or bean counting one by one, besides being a shortcut to that, what good is math?
Yeah.
Exactly. Really true.
Well, and you can frame a completely false hypothetical thing, and you can frame that as mathematically correct, but it doesn't make it any truer or less false, right?
Yeah, it's like programming something. Well, okay, you programmed it and it works out. The program runs, but you programmed it for a reason. It's the same thing as drawing a picture. And that's how math is used in the scientific disciplines far too often. And it like differential equations and calculus and all these things, they're very precise, they're very exact, but a saying that I have is that math is exactly wrong because it can get you to a number that is extremely precise, and it's reproducible, and it is repeatable, but it doesn't have the third thing that it needs, and that's observable. Because when you go and observe it and you actually do go out and count, you actually do go out and physically measure something, it's never, okay, I won't say never, it's almost never going to match what the mathematical calculation produced.
Well, and these guys go out and they actually measure the angular size of items in the sky, as if they don't realize that the angular size means nothing in reality, because it can be a very big item that's close, or it can be a big item that's far, or a far item that's small. We don't know that, but they've been given these answers, and they think that means that the items are what they say they are. And it's just not the way it works. It's not the way math works. It's not the way angular size works. That the moon or the sun could be many different distances. What is it? It could be 31 or 32 miles and 3,500 miles up, but it could also be anything different. I mean, it could be 2 million miles away, and I think it would come out it's 2 million miles across, and it would come out to 229 million miles away. So you would have to, at that point, then readjust all of the planets and all their distances together. But I'm saying that there is nobody who's been to the sun to measure it. It's just the angular size.
Yeah, and we probably never will, and so it's just always going to be something theoretical in a way. But if you look back in history at what Newton and the rest of them believed as far as the distance of the sun, these are wildly different numbers, and anybody who cares about statistical certainty would say that it's a bunch of hogwash, because if it's science, you're going to have an experiment that's repeatable, reproducible. Okay, in this case, observable, yes, you have observable angles and things that you work with mathematical assumptions. But when you come up with your final result, you have to assign error to it. At least that's what I learned. And when you assign error to it, for example, the gravitational constant, I looked at a graphic of it, and the gravitational constant number with the error, which is, you span it out, say 3 sigma, even 6 sigma. Well, I said it backwards. If you span it out, let's just say 3 sigma, there's no overlap. And at 3 sigma, you ought to have an overlap with all of the experiments if the experiment is valid. So what it does is it invalidates the experiment. In this case, the Cavendish experiment. But they have other methods, but they have the same problem. Even though they did hone in and pick a number, but it was more of like a rough average of the most recent constants that they found. And even that is changing. And it just is laughable that the gravitational constant, big G, it's not constant. It's continually changing. And and math has a provision for something like that, but what that provision does is it invalidates the experiment as a whole. Yet they haven't rejected the premise. They've been working on it for over 200 years now, and it's one of those frustrating things in the field of physics that is just enough to make you just throw it all away. It's like if that's what these people are doing, they are spending their time and money going to conferences I think it's like every 12 to 15 years they have another one of these conferences where they all get together and they try to form a consensus to settle on a number for something like the gravitational constant. I think they do the same type of thing for the speed of light.
Yeah, the Royal
these types
Society.
of things.
The Royal Society's been doing that forever. They have these, once a year meetings where they get together and go through all the problems that they're having, what numbers aren't equating, how do we process this software so everybody has the same results. People just don't know that. And like you said about the sun distance, I mean, how mathematically perfect is that when Copernicus thought it was 3 million miles, and then 100 years after that, Kepler said it was 12 million, and then Isaac Newton actually said it matters not whether we reckon it to be 28 or 54 million miles distant, for either would do us just as well. So that's real scientific. And then Benjamin Martin had 81 million, Thomas Dilworth 93 million, John Hind 95, Benjamin Gould 96, Christian Mayer 104. So I mean, it's just been a never-ending kind of number. And then we come in and we're making comments on what we're doing, and people are asking for the answers of how far the sun is right now. Like we're supposed to just know, when even these guys have been doing it for hundreds of years.
Yeah, in fact, they made the same thing with the temperature of the sun. Kelvin, the proposal of the distance is the same as the proposal of the temperature. The final temperature, proposed was by Lord, was a knight, Kelvin. Was just a regular science guy. He was from the Royal Academy of London, and he was, named Lord. So they do the same thing. In fact, for example, talking about the speed of light, we must be remembered that nobody proved the speed of light in vacuum. Maxwell, in the time of Albert Einstein, the other great, model that was proposed was the electromagnetic and electrical field model. And that was based on the Maxwell equations and research and things like that. And Maxwell, the only thing that Maxwell calculated was the speed of electrical frequency. It's not the speed of light. The light doesn't have speed. And they conclude in the velocity of 200,000, 98 point, blah, 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 blah. But they never proved, they assume that electrical frequency wave in a vacuum reach the velocity of 300,000, per meter, centimeter. I can't remember the the final measurement in English, sorry. But they assume that, that one. They assume that, but nobody proved that in perfect vacuum, because nobody reached perfect vacuum.
Right. And you find that sort of thing just all over the place when it comes to theoretical physics. Everything from light speed to the distance and size to the sun, just all over the place where you'll find some really quite ancient experiment or theory even. So you'll find this ancient, like hundreds of year old theory where somebody comes up with very loosely interpreted evidential data, and they'll interpret this in a certain way, and then that value is sort of grandfathered into the annals of scientific dogma, where that value must be assumed forever, and any experimental result that strays away a little bit from that value or disagrees entirely with that value is cast aside as bad data and rejected because it doesn't match that body of scientific accepted dogma. I mean, could you imagine if we as flat earthers did that? If we just came up with numbers for like the distance and size to the sun and then built all these mathematics around it, and anything that fell outside of that and disagreed with it, then we would cast it out as heresy. I mean, it is ridiculous the lengths that's, quote unquote science has gone to.
Yeah, it's the literal end of science as we know it, and that's a sad thing because science has done so much. But when something as simple as dinosaur bones are now being found with soft tissue in them, and it's happening everywhere, and people are blind sending these into labs that are coming back with 20,000, 30,000 years, and then when they find out that it's a dinosaur bone, then they tell the people, you're not allowed to submit anything here ever again. People are getting fired from their job, being told that they can't speak at things. So, I mean, what do you think is going to happen in the future when somebody finds soft tissue in a bone? They're not going to bring it up because they don't want to lose their job. They don't want to go away. So they're going to go with the flow and say whatever they're supposed to say. And that's how science kind of bullies people into the positions that they're in, where they have no choice but to conform, because anything different and you will be ostracized.
Yeah.
That's so true. I used to make jokes about the fact, being in the science department. I had friends in my dorm room or in my dormitory who had a political science major. And I used to tell them, hey, I'm in, my major is political science as well, except I didn't realize that's what it was. Because, it's supposed to be science, but it was completely political, politically correct as far as what you could ascribe to when you're doing these table discussions and things like that. Extracurricular stuff, especially, it was very dogmatic, and you get these visceral reactions when you bring up something that's taboo. Like let's say it's soft tissue, you bring it up, people are going to just react and totally give you a look that lets you know that you need to stop. You take that stuff out of here. Don't bring that in here. It's not welcome. That type of stuff is very, very disheartening when you're experiencing it, and in my mind, discrediting to the whole structure that they've set up of education. And it's a shame because it makes sense to have gatherings of, it makes sense to have the university system and everything like that, but it's so flawed. It's just something that I have to lament. But maybe things are changing. I hope so. I think it just takes maybe a couple people to side together instead of just one person. That would really make a difference. And maybe there are the people in the room that are afraid to speak up, but it's really important to speak up in those cases.
Yep, agreed. Okay, Jaron, we're a little past the halfway mark, and we had talked about terminating the jeranism feed. For those of you who are not aware and are watching this show on the jeranism channel, we are simulcasting. This is a simulcast, and it is primarily being originated on the Globebusters 2 channel. We have decided that we are going to terminate the jeranism feed and move everybody over to the Globebusters 2 channel. So the mods will be posting links in the jeranism channel, so you guys can move over to the Globebusters 2 channel. we'll be doing that here very shortly. Jaron, are you ready to do that here shortly?
I'm good. I'm dropping the link. Hopefully that's the right link. I don't know now. Yeah, I'm dropping the link in the. Why do you and I have different links?
Well, of course we do.
No, but I mean, aren't we sending?
No,
both
you dropped
people
your
to-
own link. You dropped the wrong one.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, don't
Pay,
go to
pay
mine.
no attention to Jaron's link there.
Let me delete my own self here.
Okay. And
Ban that guy. He's terrible.
Yep, I'm
All right, there.
posting it in there, and mods keep posting it. As
Yeah,
long
give
as
it
you
about
can.
5 minutes and I'll drop off. Or I'll end it. But yeah,
Okay.
so if you're one of the 781 people on the Jeranism channel, click the link in the chat, and we're heading over there. So come join us and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And in about 5 minutes or so, this feed will be ending over here. I'm going to see if that number actually goes down. We'll find out if people are actually listening to us or sleeping.
Yeah.
Looks like there's some people popping over to the Globebusters 2 stream. So
sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Beautiful. Okay. So yeah, guys, go ahead and get moved on over, and we will continue on with our main presentation, and also our presentation from Steve and Andrew, which I believe you guys are Andrew. I noticed you joined us. Are you here, buddy?
Yes, we are.
Hey, all right, Andrew. Is this Andrew or Steve I'm talking to?
This is Steve.
Oh, Steve. Okay, is Andrew here? Well,
Like walkie-talkie.
I see his icon in there. Maybe he is not got any audio, but Andrew, we're not hearing you. Maybe if you're hearing us, type something in the chat, and we'll try and get you guys up and running. But anyway, so we will have Steve and Andrew on, like I said, probably the last half hour or so we can talk to them a bit, and then also present their new video.
Awesome.
Hey guys, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Hey Andrew.
Hey Jaron.
Hey Andrew.
Hey.
Nice to meet you finally.
Yeah, finally, voice to voice. This is awesome.
Right. Awesome. So for those.
Hey Andrew, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going,
You
man?
from Argentina.
Yes, sir.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure
Are
to talk to you.
you're partially upside down, isn't that right?
Yeah, and we are spinning at 900 kilometers per hour.
A little bit
No,
different spin.
we are better than the equator. You know, we have
Absolutely.
better yeah, better speed.
All right, beautiful. So Andrew, I'm so glad to meet you, and we will be getting to your presentation here shortly. And Steve, your channel is Realm Walker, and I just wanted to say welcome. And if, like I say, if either one of you have anything to chime in about, during our main presentation, feel free to join the conversation. We do things in kind of a roundtable thing, so don't be shy. Just jump right in.
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Andrew's video, Round and Curvy, has got the award for the video I've watched the most times on YouTube.
You know,
I watched it too many times.
I'm a little irritated by the view count, so I don't know if YouTube is doing something. Do you guys know? Are they?
What's it on my channel? Is it good on mine?
It's pretty good. I think it's higher, obviously, but I'm like at 13,000 ish. But it's just the slowest creep that I've ever seen on one of my videos. So I don't know. They're not suggesting it or how that works, but
I thought it was so good. Yeah, maybe I'll Facebook post it and tweet it just to see if that does anything. But what you don't remember what mine's at? I'm not. I'll go look at it.
No, it's probably up around 15.
That's it, huh?
I'm not really sure, but
That's really low.
Let's find out.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll look and check. But it's a great video.
Yeah, it is.
Thank
Well, my favorite part of Andrew is he is my favorite crisis actor ever, Harrison Hanks.
The ultimate.
That video has been taken down 3 times by YouTube, so they really don't want that up there. They say it's because of bullying. So I guess if you bully traders, then you got to take that down.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
It's crazy. Yeah, I know. It didn't last long. And who was it? I think Antonio got it removed off of his channel, and so people just they're just not YouTube just isn't feeling Harrison Hanks, I guess. Or maybe they're feeling him a little too profoundly. That's the problem. Yeah, that's probably it.
Hitting a little close to home.
Yep. So.
Oh
okay.
yeah, mine only has 11,000 on my channel. That's really bad.
Wow.
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 Okay.
Wow.
wow,
Wow.
wow. All right, guys.
Wow.
Do they,
So
let me ask you. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but because I don't buy that, Mark Sargent's video, the one that we push the most, only has around 500,000 views. I mean, are they splitting votes or views on it? Like, so for every 100
Well,
views, they
somebody
they-
put up Mark Sargent's video on their channel, and it has like a couple million. So I know it is being seen. I don't know. It just depends, because I would say that sometimes I've thought that about videos I've done. But then again, I realize that it does have to do with what you're doing. If my wife and I do a parody and I put that up, I get nothing. I'll get 10,000 views on it, if that. So, and it's kind of weird, because then I'll do another video where I just talk about something else, and it's 30,000 within a week. So it's like, I don't really know what drives it, but it does seem like it is consistent. Like I said, I've never done a parody and it gone to anything. So
yeah,
might be something to do with that certain genre or something.
I think YouTube does have things in place for certain channels where it makes it difficult to get it in front of even your subscribers, let alone fresh people that have never seen your channel. And I don't know, maybe if it's some sort of a blacklist tag they put on your account, like sort of shadow banning, sort of. But yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that they're doing something like that, but to what extent, I don't know, because you're right. I mean, you will get instances where a video just randomly will perform pretty well. But
Right.
it's
And
hard to say.
when you have a certain amount of subscribers and you get only 10% of those in views, that's kind of like, what's going on there? And I get people all the time that email me and say, I'm not getting sent your new videos. Can you please turn it on to have me notified when you put up a new video? Like I have that turned on. I don't know. I can't do anything about that. There's a little box that says notify subscribers of upload, and that's always checked. So I'm not sure what else I can possibly do. I tell them, make sure you hit the little bell icon, and that must have something to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to shut down my feed just so everybody knows. So
All
go
right.
over to Globebusters 2.
Yeah, I'll shut it down first, and then you shut it down. Jaren, give me a little remote control to kill your feed, and then you can stop your broadcast from OBS. So everybody that is on the Jeranism channel, this is your last notice. We are.
And the reason we're doing that, just so people know why we're doing that, is because we're being careful in case that something happens that we talked about earlier, that somebody busts us for something on one channel. We don't want to get in trouble on both. So we're just going to go to one channel. And Globebusters, the one will be back when, Bob? Do you know? Is it about a month away?
August 21st or 26th, one of the two.
Okay, so about a month and a half.
Yeah. Yep. So all right.
And I'll
so,
be trying to post these here too. So okay.
Okay, cool. So everybody, we are closing down the Jeranism side now. Come over to the Globebusters 2 feed. Mods, please continue to post the link to Globebusters 2 as long as you can. And we are going to shut the Jeranism feed down right now.